This is not what you're watching in Season 3. This is the ending, George R.R. Martin wrote. The conclusion of the Dance of the Dragons, the fall of Rhaenyra Targaryen, the death of the last great dragons, and the rise of the king who would inherit a realm in ruins. After years of war, Rhaenyra finally sat the Iron Throne. But the victory came too late. The crown was bankrupt, the people were starving, her allies had fallen one by one, and hatred for the Targaryens grew every day. All it took was a single spark for King's Landing to erupt. Cobbler's Square burns under a sky black with soot, while a man rises atop an overturned barrel in the middle of the crowd. Barefoot and covered in filth, a beggar's bowl hanging from his neck. He's missing his right hand, and the stump is wrapped in filthy leather. He is the shepherd. His voice booms through the night as he raises his arm and thrusts the stump of his missing hand toward Rhaenys' hill, screaming that the dragons are demons born in the pits of the seven hells by the sorceries of Valyria, and that the false king and the whore queen must be overthrown so their demonic beasts can perish. The people listen as thousands of torches light the streets of King's Landing, filling the city with smoke and rage, and the smell of sweat and panic seeps into every corner of the capital. High above, behind the walls of the Red Keep, young Aegon stands firm on the battlements, staring out over the sea of torches in silence. His face is pale, and his dark, empty eyes take in everything: the smoke, the screams of hatred, and the uncontrollable trembling of his mother. Beside him, Queen Rhaenyra shakes, consumed by a paranoia that never leaves her for a second. The first blow that finally shattered her mind and left her breathless had arrived days earlier from the Riverlands, when devastating news reached the Red Keep. Daemon Targaryen is dead. Over the waters of the God's Eye, Daemon challenged his nephew Aemond to a final duel. While their two dragons tore each other apart in the sky, Daemon committed a suicidal act. He unbuckled from his saddle and leapt in mid-flight toward his nephew's dragon. With brutal ferocity, he drove his Valyrian steel sword straight into Aemond's eye before riders and beasts both crashed into the water. Daemon's body was never found. Without her husband, without her greatest warrior, and without the military pillar of her cause, Rhaenyra spends her days locked among the shadows of the castle, swinging between blind fury and absolute terror. The crown's coffers are completely empty, and Lord Celtigar's crushing taxes have ruined the merchants and filled the streets of King's Landing with hatred and resentment. Rhaenyra knows the city is lost. The dragons that should protect her are locked in the Dragonpit, chained like circus beasts. Aegon feels the cold of the stone under his hands as he understands that the steel of the sellswords and the city watch no longer belongs to them, and betrayal hangs in the air. Aegon watches his mother stare into the dark corners, waiting for assassins to appear at any moment, and the boy learns in silence that power protects no one. The castle becomes a suffocating prison, and the tension finally explodes when Queen Rhaenyra, the young wife of Aegon II, who remained a prisoner in the fortress, can no longer bear the weight of everything that has happened. No one ever knew for certain what finally broke her. But that night, she made an irreversible decision. Rhaenyra climbs to the battlements of Maegor's Holdfast, and without hesitating a single second, leaps into the void to impale herself on the iron spikes that line the dry moat. At the distant sound of the impact and the guard's shouts, the dragon Dreamfire roars from the dragon pit, snapping her thick chains as if she could feel her rider's pain from afar. The death of Queen Rhaenyra is the final straw for a city that can no longer contain its rage. The mob in the streets demands vengeance, blaming Rhaenyra directly for the death of the beloved queen, and the shepherd seizes the crowd's fury and directs it toward Rhaenys' hill, straight to the dragon pit. The assault on the dragon pit is a slaughter behind closed doors. The mob smashes through the rear gates and surges into the cavernous structure, where 4 dragons are locked away: Shrikos, Morgul, Tyraxes, and Dreamfire. The beasts wake in fury, but the chains limit their movement and the enclosed space becomes an infernal furnace. Hob the Hewer leaps onto Shrikos' neck and drives an axe into her skull, blow after blow, until he kills her. A knight in heavy armor throws himself straight into Morgul's open jaws, letting the fire consume him alive while he drives his spear into the beast's eye. Tyraxes dies in his lair, trapped in his own chains when the attackers force their way through the rear door and block his only exit with their own piled corpses. Dreamfire, maddened by the constant rain of arrows and crossbow bolts, takes flight and smashes violently into the great bronze dome. The structure gives way and tons of stone and metal collapse, crushing the dragoness and hundreds of humans alike. The heat inside the hill becomes unbearable and flesh melts. Though Aegon is safe inside the Red Keep, the stench of burning dragon flesh rises from Rhaenys' hill and spreads across the entire city like a gray shroud. While the massacre in the Dragonpit reaches its end, Prince Joffrey refuses to stand by. Hearing the agonized roars from the hill, the boy makes a desperate decision. He begs his mother to let him fly to the pit to save Tyrax's, his own dragon. Rhaenyra forbids it. But before anyone can stop him, Joffrey slips away from his protectors and runs toward the outer stables. He finds Syrax, his mother's dragon, chained and furious. Joffrey mounts the beast bareback, without saddle, without whip, without anything, forcing Syrax to snap her chains and take flight. But Syrax has never accepted him as her rider, and 200 feet above Flea Bottom, under a rain of stones and arrows launched from the rooftops, the dragoness thrashes violently and Joffrey loses his grip. The fall is horrific. The boy hits the ground, his back broken in two. He cannot move. Someone snatches his own sword and drives it into his belly. But the mob surrounding him does not finish him. A girl, the daughter of a chandler, kneels beside him and holds his head while the blood soaks the mud. Joffrey only manages to whisper 2 words before he dies. "Mother, forgive me." 7 knights ride down from the Red Keep in a desperate charge into the hell of Flea Bottom. The ones known as the 7 who rode cut their way through the mob with sword blows, but they arrive too late. They can only recover the prince's body. When they present her with what remains of her son, Rhaenyra breaks completely. But the slaughter in King's Landing was only just beginning. Still in the air after the prince's fall, Syrax descends like a shadow of vengeance upon the mob looting the ruins of the pit. Popular legend swore that the shepherd stood firm and called upon the warrior to cleave the beast's head with a single stroke. But amid the smoke, the flames, and the chaos, no one ever knew for certain how Syrax died. When the battle ended, the dragoness lay lifeless among hundreds of corpses. Rhaenyra has lost her husband, her greatest warrior, her dragons, and nearly all her children. Tragedy and paranoia break her for good. She has no weapons left and no protectors in the capital. All she has left is little Aegon, who watches the remains of his brother and the collapse of his mother with silent terror. Escaping King's Landing is no longer a political move, but a mission of pure survival. Rhaenyra slips out through the Dragon Gate under cover of night, and they travel along the coast toward Dragonstone, believing the Valyrian stone fortress will be their refuge. But betrayal has gone ahead of them. Sir Alfred Broome, a knight resentful at being passed over for promotion, opens the gates to the Greens, delivering the castle to the men of Aegon II to finish Rhaenyra's fall. When Rhaenyra and Aegon land under the cold rain, they find not loyalty, but spears pointed at their chests, because Broome has taken the castle. In the inner courtyard, under the shadow of the Dragonmont, lies Sunfire. The golden dragon is a ruin. He is missing an eye. In its place remains only an empty socket filled with black clotted blood. The scales of his belly are burned and seep pus. His left wing is half torn away, hanging at a grotesque angle, preventing him from flying and forcing him to drag himself painfully just to eat. In a litter near the dragon sits Aegon II. The king is crippled, his legs broken, and his body covered in horrific burn scars, his face bloated from the strong narcotics the maesters give him to endure the pain. Aegon II looks at his half-sister without a shred of pity. "Let her know what it feels like," he murmurs, and nods toward Broome. One of Broome's men wounds Rhaenyra so the scent of blood will wake the beast, and the dragon smells the flesh and stirs from its lethargy. Sunfire advances. Aegon watches the scene in horror, unable to move or look away as the nightmare becomes real. Rhaenyra finds her son's eyes one last time. "Aegon," she manages to say, before the dragon opens its jaws. The first bite tears off Rhaenyra's arm and shoulder, while the second rips open her side, and blood spatters the black stones of the courtyard. Aegon feels the heat of his mother's blood on his own face as Sunfire devours the queen in 6 ferocious bites, leaving only the left leg below the knee. The boy Aegon does not scream, but in that instant, absolute terror consumes him, and the Age of Dragons ends for him forever. Aegon II returns to King's Landing as a bitter, broken king, turning his reign into an exercise in physical pain and paranoia. Sunfire dies shortly afterward, rotting in the courtyard of Dragonstone. Aegon II tries to rule from a wooden chair with blankets over his useless legs, but the vengeance of the other side is already in motion. The armies of the north, led by Cregan Stark, and the River Lords march on the capital, exhausting the provisions and driving the sellswords to flee at the certainty that the city gates will not withstand an assault. Inside the Red Keep, the King's Council meets in secret. Lord Larys Strong and Lord Corlys Velaryon know the city will fall and be sacked, so to save the people and what remains of the realm, they make a cold, calculated decision. Aegon II must die now. When the king is carried in his litter toward the sept, curtains drawn to shield him from the cold wind, they leave inside a jug of his favorite spiced wine. The king drinks without suspicion, and the poison is swift and silent. When the guards reach the sept and open the curtains, they find the king dead upon the cushions, a trail of black blood on his lips. Lord Larys and Lord Corlys have eliminated the king to save the city. News of Aegon II's death reaches the besieging armies. Cregan Stark enters the capital as an implacable judge. With him comes Ice, the legendary Valyrian steel sword of House Stark, the great blade with which the lords of the north have dispensed justice for centuries. Instead of carrying it on his back like a trophy, he draws it to pass sentence, following the ancient northern custom. The man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. Stark does not smile and assumes the office of Hand of the King by right and necessity. The Hour of the Wolf begins. For 6 days, Stark turns the Red Keep into an execution ground without showing mercy to the traitors. Lord Larys Strong is beheaded, and the corrupt guards are sent to the wall or lose their heads. Northern justice is swift, brutal, and without appeal. With a single stroke, Stark cleans the court. On the 7th day, Cregan Stark returns the Hand's chain. He has no interest in the south or in power, so he packs his furs and marches back to Winterfell, leaving behind a realm in ruins and an orphaned boy. The lords of the realm gather before the Iron Throne and choose little Aegon as king. Aegon III Targaryen is still a child when, to calm the waters between the two factions, they marry him to little Rhaenyra, the daughter of Aegon II. The wedding feels more like a funeral, held on Visenya's Hill, since the Dragonpit is a graveyard of rubble. On the day of his coronation, Aegon III climbs the steps of the Iron Throne slowly. The swords of his enemies, melted and twisted, wait for him with their cold, sharp, hostile steel. The boy sits, and the Iron Throne is treacherous, its cruel blades making no exceptions, taking their price in flesh from whoever occupies it. Aegon accepts the pain in silence, dressed in black mourning, as blood begins to well and stain his clothes. Aegon looks at the crowd of lords kneeling before him. His dark eyes stare through the lords, through the walls, into a void no one else can see. The Grand Maester places the crown on his head, and the weight of the metal feels crushing. Aegon III delivers no speech and raises no hand in greeting. The boy who survived the horror of watching his mother devoured in 6 bites, who saw his brother die begging forgiveness in the mud, and who saw his only friend die poisoned by the cakes meant for him, is gone. In his place remains only the broken king. If you've made it this far in the video, you've probably realized something crystal clear. Almost none of what I've just told you matches what you're seeing on your screen, and it's not your mistake. With the changes House of the Dragon has introduced so far, adapting this ending exactly as it appears in the book seems less and less likely. It starts with the complete removal of Nettles. In the book, this young bastard girl is crucial. Her emotional bond with Daemon Targaryen brings out his more human side. But at the same time, it triggers Rhaenyra's jealousy and paranoia, leading to an execution order that forces Daemon to flee to Harrenhal. Without Nettles, the series loses the logical reason that separates Daemon from the Queen, simplifying a complex betrayal into a simple clash of egos. On top of that comes the erasure of Rhaenyra Targaryen. By deleting Helena's youngest son, the series eliminates one of the most brutal moments in the book, the murder of the child at Bitterbridge. This event is not pure violence for its own sake. It is the point of no return that turns the people against Rhaenyra and justifies Helena's later madness. Without Maelor, the Queen's tragedy loses its darkest weight. The complete rewriting of Alicent Hightower also weighs heavily. In George R.R. Martin's story, there is no room for friendship or reunions. The hatred between her and Rhaenyra is direct, political, and absolute. The series invented this broken friends dynamic to soften Alicent, while in the original text she is a cold strategist who would never hesitate to see Rhaenyra's head roll. And then there is the invention of the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy. This television edition distorts the intentions of Viserys and Rhaenyra, turning a dirty fight for power into a heroic mission. In the book, there are no prophecies. The dance is pure politics, driven by ambition, envy, and revenge. Finally, the changes to the timeline are enormous. Aemond proclaiming himself King Regent alone, or people swearing loyalty to Rhaenyra when they shouldn't, these are inventions of the series. In the canon, the war is far more direct and swift. Two versions of the same blood, the one Martin wrote and the one HBO decided the audience could bear to watch. Tell me in the comments what other ending, continuation, or story you'd like me to narrate on the channel. And remember, if you enjoy this kind of video, the best way to support us is by leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing. See you in the next one.